Story 1. After years of my dad enabling his entitled wife's toxic behavior, my stepmother, I finally went no contact when she attacked my kid over a wedding dispute. I tried posting this on AITA through a different account a couple of days ago, but it didn't work out. Given the trigger warning, I'm not surprised. I have since concluded my wife and I did the right thing, so this will be my last attempt to post this story. I tried to add some info and change the wording a little. All names are fake. My 28M stepmother, 49F, is a wannabe party planner. She has taken it upon herself to plan and host every party and holiday my dad's family has thrown since she married him. I never loved those occasions growing up. She's controlling and gets upset if people complain about anything, but I humored her for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I'm getting married to my fiancée Jane, 26F, in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane ended up getting pregnant a couple of months after that, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while, so we've had a long engagement. My stepmother has tried to hijack our wedding plans from day one, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced to Jane's dress appointments, etc. And we have repeatedly asked her to stop. Dad wants us to humor her, but she's clearly resentful of the fact that she's not hosting the wedding or being labeled mother of the groom in invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, 4M, Jane's paternal half-brother. She got custody of him a few months into our relationship after his parents died. I ended up moving in with them during the pandemic and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad and refers to us as his sister and his op, but we love him like a son. Stepmother, though, hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby-trapping her way into the family. That accusation only got worse after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but my stepmother demands him to refuse to babysit Luke, so we don't leave the kids with them often. Instead, Jane's brother and SIL usually watch the kids for us as their children are close to ours in age. We had a thing last Sunday, and my BIL was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as well as my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place and we left. We came back to find both kids crying, stepmother screaming, and dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told stepmother that both he and our son were going to be our ring bearers, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wasn't going to allow that because he wasn't family. She then made me need to include the trigger warning when he started crying. His lip is still split. She'd never gotten to this point before. We immediately banned her from our house and from our wedding. Dad is fuming and has said he's not going without her. He's also convinced half of his side of the family by severely downplaying what stepmother did to boycott the wedding as well. This includes my stepbrother, who fully agrees with his mother no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Me and Jane are refusing to budge, but many of my cousins who aren't coming anymore are asking us to reconsider. Pretty much all of Jane's family agrees with us, but one of her aunts has suggested that maybe my stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. I've honestly had it with my family enabling her behavior. I love my dad and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to go and see if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the next day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters were right to assume that my SM hadn't been invited to our house, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We didn't expect her to actually do anything this awful, but we've never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her WAP sheet. We wouldn't let her get away with this. Edit to there. There is a lot of additional info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I've gotten so far, but all I'll add for now is that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after. He already had a counselor. Jane was pretty traumatized when her dad and stepmom died and was worried it would rub off on him, and we continue our treatment. We've been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual too. He's still upset but is already doing much better. Update. The entitled step monster got herself banned for my wedding. I want to thank everybody who took the time to read and/or comment on my previous post. It's been a tough week, but it's always great to know that people care. I haven't been able to reply to every comment, but I will try to address some in this update. This might get a little long. I'll start off by saying that me and Jane are going NC with my dad and SM. We haven't really spoken to either of them since the incident, and I don't plan on being the one to reach out. Any communication between us is being handled by my younger sister. She's completely on our side, but we remain in low contact for the time being. I've decided to adopt Jane's way of dealing with people she cares about. Forgive what's apologized for, but never forget. Basically, if Dad or SM ever truly understand what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we're willing to forgive them, even if begrudgingly so, but we will never ignore or let them forget what they did to our family. And for the time being, neither of them will be allowed nearly Luke, our baby, and any other kids we may have in the future, even if we do forgive them. As for the rest of my family, I read a lot of comments suggesting that I post pictures of Luke's face as well as the nanny cam footage. I'm not very active on social media, but even if I was, I'm not comfortable exposing my injured preschooler like that, especially given that nothing on the internet ever truly goes away. I also decided not to share the pictures with my family unless truly necessary. I should probably mention that while my family adores my dad, most of them aren't very fond of SM. She had 2 failed marriages prior to meeting my father, the first of which resulted in my stepbrother, and he cheated on his then-girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and disliked SM right away. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative since the beginning, but she's also tried to force her way into the family matriarch role by any means possible. Taking over planning duties for every family event was her favorite way to do it because of all the attention and compliments that come with it. The main reason why I hated these parties growing up was because she'd always find a way to make everything about her, including Christmas and mine and my sister's birthdays. The rest of the family felt neutral about it, but they never liked her. With Luke, it was different. Most of my relatives didn't meet him until co-restrictions got looser, and by then he was 2 years old. He's a bright and genuinely lovable kid, and there weren't really any other small children in the family, so everyone immediately started fawning over him. The way I see it, SM got upset that Jane and Luke were accepted by my family so easily compared to her experience, and that's why she resents them both, but I can't confirm that. She was also mad that aside from not being the planner, she would have absolutely no involvement in the wedding party. She tried to pressure us into letting her officiate. One of Jane's best friends was offered that role a year ago, making stepbrother my best man. He wasn't interested, and I'd already gotten my best friend or asking her sister's daughter to be our flower girl. We'd promised Jane's 3-year-old niece, also her sister's daughter, is 15 and doesn't know us. She also tried to convince us to let my dad walk Jane down the aisle since her father was gone. But her eldest brother, the BIL I mentioned in the first post, had already been enlisted. SM was disappointed that my family wasn't as involved in the wedding as Jane's and kept making comments about how that would never happen if we put her in charge. All of that being said, there is nothing that can excuse being that awful to a child, especially if it really is the petty jealousy that I suspect. Because I haven't spoken with my father, my sister has been keeping me updated on what he's been up to. As I found out through her, the story my dad and SM told the rest of the family completely erases Luke's injury and the abuse charges. It insinuates that me and Jane banned them because we got annoyed with SM and decided to take it out on my dad as well. Because most people already disliked SM, explaining what actually happened that night wasn't hard, and most of the relatives that I actually wanted at the wedding have apologized and are berating my dad as well. The people that didn't believe us as well as those saying we overreacted have been told they are not welcome in our home anymore. Those are mostly people from my dad's generation, so I can't say I'm surprised, but the realization that they are so biased they're willing to protect a woman they hate after she hurt a child just to make my dad happy has reassured me that I don't need any of them in my life. Stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to believe his mother could hurt a child, even with all the evidence we have. I have to admit I understand. I love my mom too, but that doesn't mean I'd excuse his obliviousness, so he's banned too. It sucks because we were close growing up, but I don't regret it. Besides, Jane has 3 other siblings besides Luke. The older Bill, a twin brother, and a younger sister, and I'm closer to them than I ever was to him. Speaking of Jane's family, they're all furious over what happened and have been extremely supportive of us. Jane's maternal family basically adopted Luke after she got custody of him and has called frequently to make sure he's okay. We did manage to save some money with everybody we uninvited and have decided to use it to help Jane's cousin. She lives in a different country and was previously unable to come to the wedding, so we're paying for her plane ticket. Luke has gotten much better and is almost completely back to being the sunny child he's always been. The split lip was shallow. Is healing slowly but didn't require any stitches. We sat him down a few days ago and explained that my dad and stepmonster wouldn't be around anymore. He really liked my dad but understands that he and SM are attached at the hip. He's clearly scared of her, but we're doing our best to make him feel safe. Me and Jane have reassured him that he is family. We love him, and no one will ever change that. I'm not too worried about Dad or SM trying to show up at the wedding, but we've alerted the venue and given them pictures just in case. Better safe than sorry. Some people brought attention to the fact that SM is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree for obvious reasons. Her main excuse for pretty much everything she does is that she doesn't feel like my family welcomes her. Dad has been guilting me to take part in everything she plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to make excuses for her without realizing this is basically a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke actually is family. What has made me accept that while I will always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore is that it hurts to know my son won't have his only remaining biological grandfather in his life, but he has 2 amazing step-grandpas to make up for it. For now, I'm sad but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like to complain about my life. It's a mess, but a beautiful one. I love my fiancé. I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. To whoever was annoyed at my censorship when posting on AITA didn't work out, Jane suggested I make the writing less explicit. I'm not used to Reddit yet, so I might have overdone it a little bit. I hope this is my last update on this story, but I'll keep you posted. Again, thank you for all your love and support. Best wishes to all of you. Update 1. SM, my family, and my kids. I'll start off by probably disappointing a lot of people. We're coming to terms with the fact that it's unlikely SM will get anything more than a slap on the wrist. Me and Jane are discussing our next move with our lawyer, but we're still not sure how we're going to move forward. It's too early to tell anyway, so we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves any more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're getting started on the process for a restraining order against SM. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week following the incident, including the nanny cam footage and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for the time being. I still haven't spoken to my father. My sister is still in LC with him, but is seriously considering cutting ties with him because my sister is the only one on my side who still talks to him. My father keeps trying to ask her about me and whether I've calmed down yet. According to her, he's annoyed that half of his family refuses to talk to him but still doesn't seem to accept why. I told my sister that she didn't need to keep playing messenger pigeon between me and our father. I never asked her to do it and it's clearly taking a toll on her, but she insists she'll stop when it feels right. Either way, there is absolutely no doubt whether SM attacked Luke. Not only did Luke say so at the moment we got home, but that was also confirmed by my father in a failed attempt to defend her behavior. He never tried to hide it from us. That and the fact that he gave Luke an ice bag is literally the only positive thing I can say about his actions. And SM was too busy screaming about how much of a whining brat Luke was being to deny it. To those who guessed SM is younger than my dad, you get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They got together when I was around 15. Also, my stepbrother is only a month older than me. She turns 50 later this year and had him at 21. Married his father a year later. Both our kids are doing mostly okay. Luke's back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he doesn't have anything better to do. He did have a few nightmares this past week and asked to sleep on our bed twice. We don't mention my father around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old son has learned 2 new words, hi and bye, and Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is coming over for a couple of days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke is excited to see her, and Jane is excited to get drunk with her. Can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us all up. I'm not doing so well, and neither is Jane. She's usually the kind of person who tries to keep her negative emotions to herself, but she cried herself to sleep almost every night the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like that, and I can't help but feel like this is my fault. There's a part of me trying to tell me I had no way of knowing SM would do anything like that, but that doesn't really change anything. I allowed my father near my kids unsupervised even though I knew she'd probably tag along. This is the guiltiest I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Jane has been improving lately and is trying to convince me to see a therapist. I've never really done that before apart from a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now feels like a good time to give it a try. I was surprised by a few messages this week from people telling me to forgive my father and SM, as well as re-invite them to the wedding. That's not happening. In fact, I'm not willing to ever forgive SM. My dad has now degraded to a huge maybe, but I will never understand or forget what she did. Also, though the wedding is the last thing on our minds right now, we're not postponing it. We considered rescheduling, but the date we'd settled on is pretty much the only one that works for our guests. We have passwords with all our vendors and gave them all clear instructions not to talk to anyone but us. Jane's family is bigger and closer to each other, which is why they're more involved in the wedding than mine, but I do have family participating. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom is walking down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me understand even more just how much I love this woman. I couldn't ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I have no idea what I'd do without her. This didn't tear us apart, and I couldn't be more thankful. I probably won't make any more updates until after the wedding unless something big happens. In the meantime, as always, best wishes to all of you. Update 2. I saw my father and SM for the first time since she attacked my child. I didn't plan on updating again before the wedding, but something pretty huge happened. The good news is we got the row. The bad news is me and Jane had to see both SM and my father at the court hearing. This was our first time seeing them since we kicked them out of our house over a month ago, and neither of us was looking forward to it. We left the kids with Jane's brother and SIL so at least Luke didn't have to see them. The hearing itself went a lot quicker than I expected. I'll give credit where it's due. My father was at the very least smart enough to understand there was no way they were winning this. There was a lot of evidence against them. Not only did we have the nanny cam footage and Luke's pictures and medical record, but my sister had also gathered every text and email SM had sent her and the family about what happened, and SM had been speaking on the phone, so there were a lot of those. They didn't even bother to get an attorney for the hearing. The judge granted us a protection order against SM. She's not allowed within 500 feet of us or our property anymore. We're changing all our locks this week, and I'm thinking about changing my phone number as well. I have to admit the moment we left the courthouse was the safest I'd felt since this whole ordeal started. Jane was close to tearing up with joy when we got to the car. We picked up the kids and went to McDonald's with Bil and his family to celebrate. Hours later, my father called me. The order doesn't extend to him, so he can still do that. Jane and the kids were in bed, so I answered. I didn't expect him to change his mind and apologize all of a sudden, but decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was truly necessary. I stated very clearly that SM was never coming near Jane or my children again, and that I was glad I hadn't had to formalize that. Every excuse he had for SM was pretty easy to shut down. But she only hit him once. Yep, and that's enough for me. The kids need their grandma. She's not their grandma. Mom is she's my wife. You need to respect her. She attacked Luke. She disrespected my family in my own house. I don't owe her anything, least of all my respect. He then went on a rant about family, how much of a godsend SM was, and everything she'd done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I replied by listing every time I could remember about her lying, overstepping a boundary, or acting unhinged around me, my family, or my sister. I brought up both my adult life and my youth. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones recently, our wedding plans, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower, and my sister's college graduation. Her obsession with the idea of a perfect family and her disgusting attitude towards Luke. I also made sure to mention her habits of going through mine and my sister's stuff when we were younger. It's trivial compared to everything else, but this behavior went on until my sister moved out of their house only 3 months ago. We're pretty sure she found out about Jane's wedding dress appointments by reading my sister's planner while she wasn't home. For instance, some of the memories I mentioned are long and hard to explain, but they did cement the fact that SM means nothing to me. He tried to go with the whole she doesn't feel included excuse again, but I shut him up. I said he'd had the opportunity to protect his grandchildren but had chosen his monster of a wife instead, and that's enough for me to want nothing to do with him. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister told me he called her afterward, and she told him she was going and see with him as well. I think we're both starting to accept our father won't change. It sucks, but he's made his priorities clear, and his children and grandkids aren't among them. For now, that's it. Now that they're fresh in my mind, I'm thinking about sharing some of the stories I reminded my father of, but that's going to take a while. Until then, as always, best wishes to all of you. Update 3. Stepmonster tried to hijack our baby shower. I mentioned in my last post that I was thinking about sharing some stories from before I finally got a row against my lovely SM and went and see with my father. Though there are plenty worth writing about, I'll start with one of my sister's favorites. All names are fake. My fiancée Jane found out she was pregnant in June 2021, and we announced it to our immediate families in August. At first, SM was completely uninterested in our baby. Not that I expected much from the woman whose reaction to our pregnancy announcement was to ask Jane if she was sure it was mine. Even my dad berated her for that one, but she barely seemed to acknowledge the fact that we were expecting. Instead, she was more interested in my stepbrother, who was also engaged and would give her a beautiful grandbaby soon. No complaints. We didn't want her involved, and we didn't even have to say anything. Planning our baby shower was complicated. Both I and Jane would have to work until the holidays, and I wanted to be involved. The due date was in February 2022, so we decided on early January as the best period of time. We enlisted 2 people as planners. My sister Laura just realized I'd never given her a name, and Jane's best friend Nina. Me and Jane are mostly laid-back people. We didn't want a big party, nor did we want to spend too much money on it. We were saving for both our baby and the wedding. We decided early on that the shower would be co-ed. It would also have to be indoors, again January. We settled on a guest list of 25 people plus about a dozen kids. We came up with the idea of a pizza party. Me, Jane, and Luke, my BIL's/surrogate son, have had homemade pizza nights weekly since I moved in, and we thought it would be fun to incorporate that into the shower. Nina found an event venue with a pizza oven, and Laura figured out ways to incorporate classic baby shower stuff into the theme. The resulting plans were awesome. Make your own pizzas, non-alcoholic drinks, and plain bodysuits for the kids to customize. Nina and Laura mixed pizza decor with baby decor and found pizza-shaped sweets. It almost seemed messy, and I was surprised they made it work, but we loved it. Most of the planning was finished by the middle of November. Well, later that month, my stepbrother's fiancée left him for her ex. They'd been together for 4 years at that point, and it was both sudden and traumatizing for him. He was devastated. SM then realized the grandkid she dreamed of would take longer to come than she'd thought. So naturally, without her son's milestones to obsess over, she moved on to mine. Suddenly, SM went from an aloof relative to an excited grandma-to-be. Facebook posts, tacky, "Oh baby," themed promoted shirts, the whole nine. At first, we were too busy finishing things up at work and getting ready for the holidays to worry about that. But it didn't take long for her to start pestering us about planning the baby shower as well as a gender reveal. We denied the possibility of a gender reveal party. No offense to those who like them, but we don't. Plus, we had decided to wait until birth to find out the sex. SM tried to get us to find out and tell her as a Christmas present, But we didn't. We also denied her the baby shower. She told my father, and he told Laura to let SM help out with the plans. She was still living with them at the time, so she didn't have much of a choice. She called Nina, and they met SM for coffee. Though I wasn't there for that meeting, Laura told me what happened later. Before they could even mention their plans, SM started talking about hers. According to Laura, she pulled a shockingly thick binder complete with the words, "Oh, baby," on the cover, colorful tabs, and pieces of fabric poking out from her bag, and skipped to the shower section. It was short compared to the rest of the binder but still long, and it was all to describe her one and only baby shower project. Laura sent me pictures, and oh boy, I'll give her this. It looked like the most Instagrammable baby shower ever. That being said, it was also barely functional and obviously expensive. There were balloons, oversized teddy bears, giant alphabet blocks, and cringeworthy signs everywhere. SM was going for pretty over-cozy with uncomfortable chairs, and some fancy food ideas that didn't look edible. Most of them had soft cheeses which Jane couldn't eat. The color palette was just 3 different shades of pink with gold accents. We'd be fine with a pink baby shower if it at least tried to mix things up a little. But SM's pictures looked like Barbie had puked all over Hello Kitty's birthday party. When Nina tried to remind her that we didn't know the sex, SM said she just knew that it was a girl. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. SM also wanted an all-female, child-free party with fancy caterers and alcohol. She had written down a guest suggestion list containing some of her closest friends. Neither mine nor Jane's moms were on it. And planned party games no one had any interest in trying out. Basically, the only thing everyone could agree on was to hold the party indoors. Laura and Nina weren't given an opportunity to show her their plans until she was done. Once they could, they explained that while they could find a way to incorporate some of SM's ideas, they'd already settled on the pizza theme. She tried to protest, but Laura stated that it was kind of them to even offer that as the shower was a month away and we'd already greenlit their plans. SM even called me to try to get them to change their minds, but I just repeated their words. My dad had found out he couldn't come to the shower, so he didn't get a say in anything anymore. The holidays came around, and the subject was dropped. SM seemed to be okay with the pizza party. Nina managed to pair some of the pink decors she'd wanted with matching blue stuff and even added one of the huge teddy bears. Fast forward to a week before the shower. Jane was almost 8 months pregnant. Everything had been bought. All guests had RSVP'd, and pretty much anything was ready to go. The shower was set to start at 7 p.m. SM offered to get to the venue earlier to prepare everything. Laura agreed mostly because she knew SM would complain if she didn't get to do anything, and the venue even let them drop off their decorations before the party. Me and Jane promised to get there at 6 o'clock. 2 days before the shower, however, the venue called Nina. They told her that SM had stopped by to drop off large, heavy boxes of what she called a little surprise for us. She'd informed them that she planned on showing up at 3:30 p.m. to start setting it up. They were calling to reinforce that the venue was only booked past 4 p.m. since SM almost threw a tantrum when told that all of the decor was still at Nina's place. So she called Laura to check if they'd left anything with SM. Thankfully, my sister is both smart and used to SM's antics, so she drove to the venue the next day and asked to see SM's boxes. She told me she wasn't even surprised at its contents when she opened them, but was still shocked at SM's audacity. All of the boxes were filled with pink, frilly decorations. Some of them seemed to be the exact same items SM had initially shown Laura and Nina. The signs, the balloons, the placemats, everything. Laura realized that's why SM intended to get to the venue earlier to set up the baby shower she'd planned and pretty much force us all to party in Barbie hell with her. She called Nina to figure out what to do. Neither of them could come at 4 p.m., so it was almost inevitable for SM to get her way. The most obvious solution they came up with was to throw everything away, but Laura had a better idea. That night, they called me and Jane. "Hey, want to destroy a party in 2 hours?" Laura got home and invited SM to go to a salon with her, lying about having coupons. SM agreed, and they planned on going right after SM was done preparing for the baby shower at 4 p.m. the next day. SM got to the venue. She was done setting things up by 5 o'clock. I'll admit the woman is fast and quickly left to meet Laura at the salon. Once they were together, Laura texted Nina that the coast was clear. At that me, Jane, and Nina went to the venue. Sure enough, SM had prepared her party. To make this shorter, I won't describe it, but I will say it was so pink it almost gave Jane nausea. For the next 2 hours, Laura distracted SM at the salon while the three of us quickly took down every piece of decor SM had put up and replaced it with the pizza party stuff. We set up the activities, made up the tables, and put every pink item we found back in SM's boxes. It was actually really fun. We were done only minutes before the shower started. A handful of guests arrived before SM did, so I barely saw her all night. Laura told me that when they got there, SM's jaw dropped as she tried to make sense of what had happened to all her pink decor. My sister just smiled, whispered "nice try" in her ear, and went to help Luke customize a bodysuit. Overall, the baby shower was everything we'd hoped for. Our friends were there, people had fun, and we had a ton of pizza, so I didn't really care that SM spent the whole party literally sulking in the corner. Nina did catch her trying to put little pink bows on top of the cupcakes, but she quickly shut that down. I give Laura and Nina full credit for saving the day. SM's interest in our baby quickly died after that. She stopped wearing her Nana shirts, didn't come to see us at the hospital when he was born, and refused to even acknowledge that he was a boy until she met him weeks later. Up until we went and see, she was a very loose definition of the word grandmother. I couldn't be more grateful my son will never know her. Edit. The baby shower was at 7 p.m. because it was the only time that worked for everyone, including the venue because it was booked for the morning and we needed time to set things up. Luke was the only small child there. All the others were at least 9. Most of the parents there left early on too. Also, though it wasn't child-free, and we were prepared for everyone we'd invited, not everyone on the guest list was able to come. Update 4. Stepmonster is gone and I think it's for good. After being engaged for over 2 years, me and Jane finally got married last Saturday. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but we'll get there, hopefully. The wedding was awesome. The kids had fun. Our extended families finally met, and we danced so much I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his ring-bearer duty seriously and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Besides my aunt getting shit-faced and being lit out on a wheelchair, which I already thought would happen anyway, everything went according to plan. It's been 4 months since we got the row against SM. Things have been mostly quiet, and I wouldn't have it any other way except completely quiet, but we can't always get what we want. I never really worried about SM showing up at the wedding, especially after the row. It's literally illegal for her to come close to us, and we made it very clear that if she tried, we'd call the cops right away. My friends still warned me to take safety measures, most of which I did. SM didn't show up, of course, but I'm a strong believer that any money spent on security is well spent, so no regrets on that end. My stepbrother and I wished each other happy birthdays, and he also texted Jane on hers back in June. That's the only contact we've had during these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My dad has given up on trying to reach me. We haven't spoken since April. He's still trying to talk to my sister for some reason, but she's ignoring him. A few days after she went and see with him, they had a huge fight over the phone about SM's treatment of us over the years. Insults were thrown, sources were brought up, and most importantly, my father took SM's side on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterward. I wanted to call him and yell at him, but she told me not to. She's doing okay now. She hasn't blocked him but doesn't take his calls or answer his texts. She's only gotten 3 a week. A week apology, one on my birthday back in May, and a long rant after neither of us wished him a happy Father's Day. After all, despite our differences, he's still our father. He's not wrong. I love my father, and I always will, but I can't be around him anymore. While I've closed that door, I'm not locking it just yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants his family back. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's the slightest chance he might, I'll consider opening the door an inch or two. This is my wife's suggestion. I'm a lot less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. She hasn't forgiven him though, or SM. Jane has always been very protective of Luke, so it was no surprise that this disaster shook her. Part of me was scared she'd blame me, but she called me a dumbass when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months, and it's helped a lot more than I thought it would. I've realized SM's behavior around me growing up was a lot worse than I always thought, and it's great to finally be able to get my feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm more than happy I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life would be this great to me. I'll stick around. Reddit is a lot more than I expected, but I can sleep peacefully now, so it's safe to say this will be my last update on this. Thank you all for the kindness and advice you gave me these months. I could have never expected the support I got from you guys, and I can't begin to describe how helpful it was. Seriously, thank you all. Edit. Okay, I updated too soon. I didn't want to write another post, so I'll just add this here. My stepbrother called me earlier today. Apparently, he and SM had a fight and he wanted to meet up. I agreed as long as it was just the two of us. We're meeting up for coffee on Wednesday. I have no idea what to expect, but even if he does apologize, I need to know he understands how and why he let us down. Edit 2. I rescheduled the meetup with me and Jane with leaving for our honeymoon on Friday. I decided that no matter the outcome of my conversation with SB, I didn't want to spend the whole trip thinking about it. He understood, and we're gonna talk when I'm back. Final update. Stepmonster and stepbrother. Hey guys, I've been away from Reddit for a few months due to some stuff at work, but a lot of people have been messaging me about my stepbrother, so I want to give you a small update. I've been busy and tired these days, so I might gloss over some details. Feel free to ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee back in August. He'd had a fight with SM and the row was brought up. She'd lied to him about some details, accusing Luke of picking on my baby, bad-mouthing Jane, and more. But this time he managed to force her to tell him the truth. My stepbrother started to reevaluate his relationship with his mother after talking to his therapist and his friends about it as well as the way she'd raised him. He finally accepted I wasn't exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me back in June but didn't want to distract me and Jane from the wedding. Me and my stepbrother spent the last 4 months working on rebuilding our relationship. We've been meeting for coffee or lunch and discussing his mother and what she did to our lives and my kids. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids saw him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things were awkward between us for a while, but we're good now. He's also making amends with my sister. In early November, he completely cut contact with SM. Jane and the kids are doing amazing. Luke turned 5 in September, and our baby will be 2 holy crap in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil while my stepbrother stays with his girlfriend. Things are great. That's all. I'm signing off for now. I'll let you know if anything happens. Happy holidays, everyone. Best wishes to all of you. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Dad crushes my dreams to protect Golden Child and refuses to pay for my tuition fee. Later on, I get my sweet revenge. I, 32M, have a younger brother, 28M, and we were raised by our dad, 56M. Ever since we were in middle school, my dad has always favored my brother over me, and with time, I got used to it. I was never the kind of son that my dad wanted because, unlike him, I had no interest in sports or doing the typical macho stuff that boys do. I was always more into more typically feminine things, which is why I was a huge mama's boy growing up. I loved everything to do with the kitchen, reading books, and even singing. My dad tried to make me play football with him, but I was no good at it, so gradually we grew apart. My brother, on the other hand, was exactly the kind of son that my father wanted. He was a rough and tough boy, not afraid of getting dirty while playing or even getting hurt. He was the perfect son for my dad, and it was very obvious that he loved my brother way more than he loved me. He'd always have great things to say about my brother, but never me. My mother never played favorites, though. She was fair to both of us, and that's why I loved her more as well. I did put in an effort to befriend my dad and spend time with him, but once we'd grown apart, he didn't seem too keen on fixing our relationship either. Unfortunately, the glue holding our messed up family together, my mother, passed away when I was in 8th grade. She'd been suffering from cancer, and by the time we realized it, it was too late for her to be saved, and she was gone before we knew it. My mother's passing pretty much devastated me, and I kind of spiraled during that time. My only solace was the kitchen, and I'd whip up something new every day as if my life depended on it. My mother was a great cook, and she'd tell me often that had she not been forced into taking over her dad's business, she probably would have become a chef. So cooking was the only thing that brought me any comfort. Since my dad and brother were no help in dealing with my feelings, they suppressed any emotional reaction they'd had to my mother's passing, and if anything, grew even more distant from me. When in normal families, something like this would have brought us closer. My fixation on cooking pissed my dad off even more, and he'd keep bugging me to get out of the damn kitchen and do something more manly. One day, when he'd had enough, he even told me that if he saw me in the kitchen again, then he'd make me do all the other household chores as well. He told me to be more like my brother and man up, which ended in a huge fight where I told him he never loved me, and he agreed to it. It was finally out in the open, and I guessed it was pretty much the last day that my father and I spoke to each other so openly, because after that, I stopped trying to win him over altogether, and he didn't seem to care about it either. For the next few years, I spent all the time I had in my room, listening to music and studying new recipes. I was determined to make this whole chef thing work out, not just for myself, but also for my mother. Meanwhile, my dad and I only spoke when it was absolutely necessary. My brother didn't care about me much either and ignored me just like our dad did. So after my mom passed away, I basically had nobody I could count on. Finally, when it was time for me to apply to colleges, I decided to apply to a few of the top culinary schools as well as normal colleges so that I'd at least have a shot. I didn't know if my dad would agree to it, but I had to try at the very least. I'd already interned at a restaurant secretly that summer and had some experience, and had managed to make them write a recommendation letter for me, since that it helped greatly. So, I did end up getting accepted into several of the schools that I'd applied to, including one of the best, which just so happened to be in France. I was thrilled that this was finally happening for me, but I was equally nervous since this would mean having to ask my dad for permission. I'd already made up my mind to beg him to let me go if he seemed to be reluctant, because I just absolutely had to make this happen for myself. I wasn't prepared to give up on my dreams under any circumstances. So, I did tell my father about it eventually, and while I was ready for him to reject my request, saying that it wasn't a masculine profession, I was absolutely not prepared for him to decline to pay my tuition at all. I still remember being really confused when he told me that he wouldn't be paying for my education at all, since it wasn't as if my dad was poor in the slightest. As a matter of fact, he was pretty well off and could easily afford to send me to France, but money wasn't the reason he wasn't ready to pay for my tuition at all. It was the fact that if I went to France and joined such a reputable school, it would make my younger brother feel insecure. As it is, he was struggling with his grades and couldn't bring himself to focus, so my dad wanted me to either go to community college or find a way to pay for my own tuition. I was astonished that he would do something so cruel to his own son and didn't know what to say to him. I tried to tell him that I needed this, but he was hellbent and was absolutely unwilling to pay for my tuition. He even told me that my brother's well-being was his topmost priority, and he didn't want me competing with his son. I could hardly even believe that this was happening, because I couldn't even imagine any other father in the world crushing their child's dreams like this just for their favorite. After a lot of pleading and sobbing, when he still refused to budge, I ended up getting into a huge fight with him where I said a lot of things to him, and then left his house for good. I started living with my maternal aunt, my mother's older sister, instead. The only reason I hadn't moved out earlier was because I found comfort in the house where I'd grown up with my mom, and also because I didn't want to change schools, which I'd have to do if I moved in with my aunt since she lived pretty far away from the high school I went to. I told her all about my dad and how he'd outright refused to pay my tuition, and that I needed her help. It felt like crap asking her for a ton of money since she wasn't as rich as my dad. But she reassured me that she'd take care of all my expenses somehow. She managed to get all her friends to pitch in and sent me to the culinary school of my dreams, and I'm always going to be grateful for that. Once I got there, I worked part-time as well and tried to make the most of my time there to make all the money that was being spent on me all worth it. I worked really, really hard and made my way up. When I graduated, I was one of the most skilled chefs there and even got a job just a few months after I graduated. I started working at a really high-end French restaurant, and I'd send half of my salary back to my aunt to repay whatever debt I had, slowly but steadily. I was just lucky that I didn't have to rely on a student loan or maybe I'd never be able to pay any of it off. Anyway, I worked in France for a few years before finally moving back home once I'd saved up enough to open up my own restaurant. It's been a couple of years, and in the meantime, I worked at another restaurant here as the head chef while also working towards my goal of opening up my own restaurant someday. It was all finalized a few weeks ago, and I was able to finally open up the restaurant I'd been working towards for so long. Two of my friends from back when I was in France also joined in on my business idea and are co-owners with me, which is why I was grateful when they allowed me to choose what we were going to name the restaurant. They happened to be from the same state, so we were all okay with opening our restaurant in my city of choice as well. I chose to name it after my mother, which was a really lucky coincidence for us since my mother actually has a really beautiful and uncommon name in the city we called our home. No less, it was all finally falling into place. A few days back, we even had a little party for a few select guests before we were officially open for business. Of course, I invited my aunt and a few of her friends who'd also pitched in to help pay for my tuition. I also invited some of my friends back from school, but that was pretty much it. I didn't invite my father and brother because of obvious reasons. Even if I'd wanted to, I couldn't have since I hadn't spoken to them ever since I'd left home, and neither had they bothered to ever get back in touch with me. I guess all of us were better off this way, but I should have known that they would definitely show up to piggyback on my success someday. And that's exactly what happened at the party we threw. They showed up an hour before the party was due to begin but weren't stopped by security since we shared the last name, and they claimed that they were here to surprise me. At least that bit was true. I was definitely surprised when I saw them. My dad and brother greeted me like nothing awful had ever happened in the past and were really warm towards me, probably for the first time in my entire life. I was shocked to see them, so I just froze when they first entered the restaurant. My buddies noticed that something was off, and after politely greeting my family, they left us on our own, and I'm thankful that they were able to pick up on my discomfort. I still hadn't recovered from the shock of seeing them again when they dropped another bomb on me and showed me a gift that they'd brought for me. It was a portrait of my mother, and my dad even told me that he commissioned it for me to hang up in my restaurant as soon as he'd heard that a new, fancy restaurant with this name was opening up in our city. He'd known that it was definitely none other than his son, and even told me that he'd always known that I had it in me. My brother, too, was jumping on the bandwagon and praising me, and telling me that he was immensely proud of me. I couldn't believe my ears and knew instantly that something was very strange about all of this. I didn't say much and kept waiting for them to get to the point because I knew there must have been a reason for them to be here. I let them speak, and eventually they did get to the reason they were here. Apparently, my brother was working as a bartender now, and even that was possible just because my dad had managed to convince a friend of his to give him a job at his club. My brother's grades had kept falling throughout high school and college, and that's why he didn't end up in the high-paying positions my dad had always expected from him. On top of that, he'd also been slacking during his high school football games, which is why he wasn't able to get a sports scholarship either. And ironically, he's the one who ended up having to go to community college because he got rejected everywhere else. What they wanted me to do was make my brother a partner in the business so that he'd have a more respectable position, even though he had done absolutely zilch to deserve it. I had the urge to laugh in their face but somehow managed to hold back and instead told them that I'd think about it. I wasn't going to think about it, though. I just didn't want to turn them away. I wanted them to stay for the party because I had a much better plan in mind to humiliate my family, who'd come out of the woodwork as soon as they received word of my success. They seemed reasonably pleased, but boy, oh boy, they had no idea what was about to come. After a while, our guests started arriving, and in an hour or so, everyone we'd invited was there. I spent the evening socializing while my dad and brother also did the same, and I even heard them boasting about me to a few people while I marveled at their sheer audacity. Towards the end of the party, it was time for the hosts, namely me and my partners, to give a toast. My friends went first since I wanted to save the best for last. Then finally, it was my turn to speak. On that day, I was finally going to speak my heart out. I started off by thanking all my guests and raised a drink to my mother first since she was the reason I'd even ever been able to achieve so much. I strongly believed that it was her faith in me as a child that had made me believe I could do any of this at all, and that had stayed with me even after she was gone. After I'd paid my due respects, I decided to get to the disrespect as well. I brought up how I'd had to take a loan from my aunt and her friends to go to culinary school, and thanked her as well. And then finally, I got to the reason I'd had to take a loan for my tuition in the first place. My family. I brought up how I'd grown up with a father who never loved me or had any faith in me, and always berated me for having feminine interests like cooking, and a younger brother who was the replica of my dad. I told them all about how my dad had refused to pay for my tuition out of fear that I'd end up becoming more successful than my younger brother, who was his golden child, which is why I ended up leaving home. But despite all odds, I was able to rise and become who I am today. So, in a way, they did deserve some credit for creating all the hardships I've had to face, or else I never would have found out how resilient I was. A lot of people shot my dad and brother the nastiest looks they could manage while I was saying all of this, and even they had the good sense to at least look ashamed, even though I knew that they didn't feel that way in the slightest. Anyway, I then walked over to my dad and brother and actually hugged them, putting up the same pretense that they had when they visited me today. Two could play this game. I announced that because they'd shown up to celebrate my success today. I'd forgiven them for whatever had happened in the past, and was even ready to give my brother the job of the bartender at my restaurant. To other people, this obviously seemed like a really emotional reconciliation, and they ended up actually clapping for me at the end of my speech, and there were a few wolf whistles. Only my family and I knew that this was nothing more than an attempt to humiliate them, which I'd done quite successfully. But they had to smile and act like they were super grateful for what I'd done since they couldn't exactly storm out angrily, which is exactly what they wanted to do. After a while, when the crowd had cleared out and it was finally time for us to go home, my dad and brother confronted me right outside my restaurant. They were furious, and I swear there were angry tears in my brother's eyes. They demanded an explanation for what I'd done, and if I'd never intended on making my brother a partner, then I should have just turned them away as soon as they arrived. I just laughed and told them that this was my form of paying them back for everything that they'd done for me over the years, and this is exactly what they deserved. Then I walked away and didn't bother to look back, even when I heard my brother crying about how this was the cruelest thing ever, and even yelled after me to tell me that I'd regret this. But I didn't care since I was already in my car and was driving away. That happened a couple of days ago, and I haven't heard from them since. My aunt thinks that I might have gone a little too far with this one and should have just kicked them out at first, but I don't agree with her. This was well deserved, in my opinion, for humiliating my father and brother. Update 1. Hey, I decided not to reach out to my family to apologize in spite of what my aunt had said about me being way too harsh. I don't feel sorry about what I did, so I'm not going to pretend I do and go out of my way to say so. They could have taken the opportunity to apologize to me when they visited me, but they didn't do so. I explained this to my aunt as well, and while she still believes I shouldn't have done what I did, she hasn't said much about it. I guess this is just one of those areas where we agree to disagree, and I'm okay with that. In other news, my brother has made sure that he goes behind my back to talk crap about me to all our friends back from school. It's unfortunate that we went to the same high school, since this just means that random strangers from school are now texting to confirm the rumors that I'd humiliated and then kicked out my dad and brother from my restaurant after feeding them 3-day-old food on purpose. Yeah, he exaggerated the story to make himself seem like the victim, which is pretty unsurprising. Ordinarily, I wouldn't care about petty rumors, but I don't want potential customers taking these rumors seriously, so I've texted my brother that if he doesn't stop spreading lies about me and my restaurant, then I'll make sure that he loses the job that he has right now too. I'm hoping that it works because I really don't feel like dealing with their unnecessary crap right now. I'm really busy with work, and this just isn't the time. Update 2 LOL. My brother texted back, saying that he was going to stop only when I'd make him a partner. I don't even understand what level of idiocy and delusion this is. Besides, if he wants to be a partner, then isn't it a pretty stupid idea for him to be talking crap about the same restaurant? I'm pretty sure this is my dad's tactic to ensure his darling son lands a high-profile job without doing any real work, but unfortunately, it's not going to work with me. I've told him that if he doesn't stop, then he'll be hearing from my lawyers and that he's in absolutely no position to be negotiating with me right now. The only reason I haven't done anything yet is because I don't want to get caught up in unnecessary drama, but I'll definitely mess him up if he tries anything funny after this, and he should take this as my last warning. I really hope he does, for his own good. Update 3. So, guys, It's been around a month since the last update, and since I've been really busy, I haven't been able to fill you guys in on what happened after that. My brother did stop talking crap about me behind my back, but they were still pretty desperate to join in on my success, so my dad decided to pay me a visit with my brother a few weeks ago just to intimidate me. They showed up at my house, threatening to sue me for using my mother's name for my restaurant, and even told me that they'd already spoken to a lawyer. So, if I didn't want any trouble, I needed to make my brother a partner as soon as possible. Obviously, I called their bluff immediately since no lawyer would take up such a stupid case. I think they were forgetting a very important fact, that she was my mother too, and not just his wife, and as far as I was concerned, no law could stop me from using her name. By then, I'd had enough of their bullcrap, so I told them that if they didn't leave me alone, then they'd be forcing my hand, and I'd have no option but to call the cops. My brother lost his temper at that point and tried to grab me by the collar, but luckily, my dad held him back. I think it was the constant humiliation that had finally gotten to him, and he'd snapped. Well, it wasn't my fault, and they were lucky that I didn't call the cops right then. I told my dad that he needed to get the hell out, but he only told my brother to go cool off in the car and that he wanted to speak to me in private. After my brother left, he tried to manipulate me by telling me that if my mother knew what I was doing to them, then she'd be really upset with me, and I should bury the hatchet at this point. I told him to leave me the hell alone because even I was at my limit. He couldn't just use my mother to get his way. That was just low. And to be honest, we were way past the point of reconciliation. Not once had either of them apologized to me even once, so I really didn't understand why they expected me to forgive them without even asking for it. As for what my mother would feel, I'm sure she would have felt equally let down back when my father had refused to pay for my tuition, and for that matter, every freaking time he made me feel awful about myself. So, he should be the last person to give me a sermon about what my mother would and wouldn't like. I know she's proud of me wherever she is, and nothing that my dad says is going to change that. At least my restaurant is doing well, and hopefully we'll be able to expand soon enough. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife married me because she's in love with my best friend. The three of us went to the same high school. Apparently, my wife has had a huge crush on my best friend since junior high, and he's always known about this. It's been 10 years since my wife and I got married, and she still loves him. For a little over 10 years, my wife has been dealing with her one-sided love for him, while I've been living with my one-sided love for her for 12. It turns out that she only got close to me and dated me in the first place just so she could get in touch with my best friend. She wanted to be part of his life no matter what, and she chose me as a scapegoat, letting me believe for years that she loved me. She told me all of this 3 weeks ago because I had decided that we were ready for a child and brought up the discussion over dinner. She told me she could make love to me, she could marry me, and she could even pretend to be in love with me, but she drew the line at children. She told me that she couldn't live with the thought of giving birth to a child that was mine and not his, and then she left me that same day. She didn't even tell me she was sorry for everything she put me through. She just dropped the bomb that I was never the one for her and left. Not that an apology would make this any better, but she did say she did her best to live a happy life with me, but ultimately, she couldn't stand it anymore. She's not picking up any of my calls or replying to any of my emails or texts, and I haven't bothered to reach out to my best friend. I know they're not together, but I can't help but feel betrayed by him after finding out he knew my wife didn't love me this entire time. I'd actually probably be happy if she ended up with him because maybe then I'd feel like everything worked out for her in the end. After 10 years, I've lost everything and learned it was nothing but a huge lie. As I sit here writing this, I feel nothing, and I'm not sure if this is normal. This doesn't feel real, and I have no idea how I'm going to make it through this. Update. My wife married me because she's in love with my best friend. It turns out my best friend had no idea about my wife's situation after all. The two of us hung out last night, made some small talk as we drank a bit before I finally brought myself to talk to him about my wife. It wasn't easy to bring it up. I told him straight up, "My wife married me because she was in love with you," and he was shocked. He didn't know what to say, so for what felt like a long time, the two of us sat side by side as he tried to process what I just confessed to him. It seems like she never ended up contacting him after she left. To my surprise, other than our small dinner gatherings together that happened a few times a year, She never really contacted him personally. She didn't really join those dinner gatherings much either. I asked him if my wife had ever told him about her feelings for him, and he mentioned that she had, but it was so long ago before we were dating that he didn't think anything of it, and he certainly had no idea she still felt that way about him after 2 decades. We talked for a long time about a lot of things, mostly about our past, our school years, college years, life, and everything else we could think of. We went our separate ways when the night was over, and now here I am, feeling guilty. My best friend had no idea how my wife felt after all this time, and he wasn't the one I should have been angry with. I regret being so upset with him and dragging him into this mess. He told me how sorry he was, even though it wasn't his fault. As for my wife, she contacted me and we're meeting up in 2 weeks. She left an email explaining that she had left for another country because she felt like she needed to go somewhere far away in order to get her thoughts together, and that she'd be returning in 2 weeks. She wants to meet up for a talk, and I have agreed to it. There are so many things we need to talk about, and I need closure. I haven't been able to sleep for weeks, and I'm so exhausted over this entire situation. Final update. My wife married me because she's in love with my best friend. My wife passed away, and I'm now a widower. I know this is a huge leap after my previous update, but my wife took her own life. We met shortly after the email she sent me, and it wasn't pretty. I thought I could keep myself together, but I ended up breaking down right in front of her. I've never felt the need to cry so much in my entire life. Seeing her again just made every single negative emotion run back to me, and I felt so used after everything we've been through together, all the time we spent together. She betrayed me. My conversation with her was basically a repeated routine of me asking her why she had done this to me, why she had said yes when I asked her to marry me 10 years ago, and why it had taken her so long to finally reveal it to me. I was destroyed because I had wasted a literal decade of my life loving this woman, only to find out it was all an act on her end. She didn't really give me any clear answers to my questions either. She was mostly quiet the entire time, letting me sob, and whenever she did give me an answer, it only made me even more emotional. One thing I do remember was that she had finally apologized. After some more meaningless conversation, I told her I wanted a divorce. Not loving me was one thing, but deceiving me for a decade is another. She agreed to the divorce, and I told her to sincerely F off and never show herself in front of me ever again. A week after she left, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law alerting me that my wife had ended her life. She took a few pills and never woke up the next morning. She didn't leave any notes or any messages to anyone. She just left for good, and that was it. The funeral took place, but I couldn't go. My best friend showed up, and all I can wish is that she knew he had shown up for her and that she was happy wherever she was. It's been 3 months since she passed away, and a deep trauma has been placed inside me. I've been seeking therapy ever since, and things haven't gotten any better, but I am functioning. It may be the bare minimum, but I'm doing my best every single day to make it through this. I don't think I'll ever find a solution that's going to help me fully recover from this incident. My life has been torn apart, and I can't function the way I used to. I guess I'll never find out what her true feelings were or why she stayed with me for so long if she never loved me. But if her goal was to haunt me for the rest of my life, she's doing a pretty good job of that because I haven't been able to get her out of my head for even a second. This is the last post I'll ever make regarding this situation, as there's no meaning in life for me anymore, but I'm going to do my best to go on. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.